Hello, everybody. It is Mike Young with aPlantBasedDiet.org, and we are back with Sid Notter for another exciting and entertaining and informative video. Hello, Sid.
Hi.
Well, Sid is, as usual, in the Chicago area, and I am over here in the studio with all the plants behind me, and we've always got some interesting topics to discuss. And today I know we're talking about, or we want to talk about, common barriers to changing your diet. Is that what you want to discuss today?
Yep.
Okay.
In my book, I've got a chapter called The 12 Barriers to Change. So this would be some of those barriers. Because even when people want to make changes, sometimes it's really hard.
Oh, for sure. I'd say no matter what we're talking about, right? It doesn't matter about diet or any kind of change, any kind of habit, right? Is very difficult. I know that.
Yeah.
So what can you tell us? Like what, I guess if you're going to give us barriers, are you also going to give us helpful tips on how to navigate those barriers?
Yeah. Yep. After each barrier, just a few tips. You know, this is very a thumbnail type of overview.
Okay. All right. Excellent. So let's get right into it, and let's hear about the first thing, because I know there's many things.
Well, the first one is blind ignorance, and that wouldn't apply to anybody probably listening to this podcast. That's where someone truly has never been exposed to the message of how diet affects their health. And so if you're watching this right now, that does not apply to you, right?
We hope. Or when you're saying blind ignorance, would it also apply to someone if, let's say, somebody told them about this lifestyle of eating whole plants, and they're like, oh no, that's just some propaganda made up by, but they might fall into that category too, like just denying it, right?
Yeah, that's called willful ignorance or denial. And that's one of the things.
That's another one. Okay. All right. So blind ignorance is just no clue at all.
No clue. I can't imagine who in this day and age would never have been exposed to the message of better eating, but there could be people out there. So I just throw that in.
Go ahead.
The next one is the fear of change. And that's a big one because our deep-rooted perceptions can really make us not want to step out of our comfort zone. So if you think that your diet, like when you change your diet, things are going to happen. Like your body's going to change. You'll be reading labels. You'll be learning to cook without fats and oils. And familiar restaurants may no longer be on the, on the docket for going out. And even some of your friendships are going to be affected. So some people even have a fear of failure if they've failed at past diets. So they don't want to try another diet because they've already failed. So that fear of failure can be a big part of it.
Well, this also, I think, applies to so many things. I'd say, like, what I hear a lot of nowadays is the concept of FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Oh.
And that being like a major reason that if you combine those three things, which are all kind of related, into one, it's a reason why people wouldn't want to move forward at all.
Right. So to combat that, I suggest that you've got to get a handle on what those fears really are. So I advise people to write those fears down, like really list them on a paper. And this could take some soul searching. You really have to dig deep and discover what those fears are.
Okay.
And once you write them down, really evaluate them to see if they're legitimate, because sometimes they're not even legitimate. Are they going to pose a danger to you or to somebody else, even if they came to fruition? Is it really going to hurt someone? You really have to evaluate what's behind the fear and if it's even something worth being fearful over.
Well, also, I like what you just say about writing this down, or you can put it in a note on your phone or something like that. I think that if you're talking about making a change, right, it's usually you've got a goal associated with it. And what I've always found is that if you've got a goal, the best way to achieve that goal is to have a plan. Either write it down, put it in a note, have a list, something like that. So I think that that's a great suggestion. Right.
Because without that goal, you're just going to drift back typically into old habits.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. We know. It happens to everyone.
Yeah. The next barrier to change is habit. Habits can be good or bad, but sometimes they become so ingrained that people get dependent on a pattern of unhealthy eating and they just can't break it. The habit is so ingrained. From grocery store purchases to fast food restaurants to, even certain traditions and memories associated with your family eating, some of those things are really hard to break. But
Yes.
sometimes they're even sort of a security blanket, like, our habits can become just a comfort zone for us. And
Yes.
a lot of people find it hard to break those old habits.
That's it. That's a great point. The comfort zone, right? I mean, you're in these habits because that is your comfort zone. And
Right.
the last thing it seems anybody wants to do is get out of that comfort zone. I think that most people view leaving the comfort zone as a problem or a bad thing, or they don't like that feeling. Of course, I don't think anyone initially likes it, but then you get to experience something totally new that you would never experience otherwise.
Right. That's
So,
right. So habits can be good or bad, right?
yeah,
Habits can actually be a good thing, right? If we
true.
make our habits healthy, that's make those habits work in your favor. So redirect your energy toward the positive habits. And the way to do that is to just create a new routine. So again, you should write down what your new routine is going to look like. Like for breakfast, I'm going to have this. When I'm running errands, I'm going to bring this with me. So you've got to think about your patterns and really write it down and decide what you're going to do instead of that and make that the new routine, because habits are born from routines.
Okay, well, I like again what you say about writing it down, or having a note or a plan or something like that. But also, I also like what you said about if you have a good habit, don't change it, because you're going to have. It's the same process for breaking out of a good habit as it is a bad one, right? So.
Yeah, just redirect your energy.
Okay. Yeah.
The next one is the avoidance of pain. So some people are pain avoiders, and so they will not go through a short-term period of discomfort to get to the long-term goal of where they want to be. And when I say pain, I'm not talking physical pain, just anything we view as a hassle, maybe,
Yep.
that is our pain point. So when you change your diet, your taste buds are going to change, your bowel habits are probably going to change. You might go through some detoxing symptoms. You might even have a little period of withdrawal. So for people that view all of those as negatives to be shunned, they're going to be pain avoiders that will not go through a short-term period of adjustment to get to where they need to be.
Yeah. That's something that I see a lot. I see that most people that I see anyway are pain avoiders. I think that no one likes to have to go through pain, but it's I think you have to convince yourself on some level that it's something that is required for growth, right? In a positive way, and maybe not look at the pain in a negative way. So these are
If
good
they're never
points.
going to experience the long-term benefits if they don't go through this little short-term period of adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing to combat that, and I read this book years ago called 10 Things I'll Never Do Again. And there's a whole chapter on pain avoiders. And it's really a good book. It's called, Never Go Back, 10 Things You'll Never Do Again. And the author says that successful people will do the hard things to get where they want to be, where unsuccessful people won't. So we have to remember that if we avoid the pain now, the payoff will never come.
Yes. Yeah, that's a difficult concept for sure, because I think that a lot of people will think that the pain may not result in anything positive, or it may go on and on continuously and never end, right? That type of a thing. And that's just not true. I think as long as you're willing to not quit, not give up, right? And most of the concepts that you're talking about, especially if it's diet, it's not a question of will you succeed. You will succeed. I mean, you definitely will succeed as long as you follow the plan, and you will reap the benefits. I don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah, you have to stand firm and persevere through the challenges, right? Because challenges will arise. There's no doubt. You just have to be willing to get through them.
Yeah, and I guess what I was trying to say is that there's no question as to whether you're going to get the benefits out of changing your lifestyle, your diet, right? Because a lot of things in life you're not sure. You don't know if it'll ever provide a benefit, but this is known.
This never does not work. Anytime I've ever seen people apply it, I've never seen it not work.
Yep.
I mean, you're going to heal it to some degree. Never does that not work.
Yep.
So the next one is false perception. That can keep people from changing because sometimes they think it's too hard, or this is going to take too much time to learn, or eating healthy is too hard to do. So all of these false perceptions can really be a stumbling block. Sometimes people even think they're healthier than they really are. I've seen that all the time, people that are on a boatload of medications, and they tell me that they're healthy, even though they're on all these meds. They have that false perception that the meds have fixed them. In other words.
Right. And I think that also this is kind of going on the way out, but I feel like a lot of Americans think that they're eating the best diet. The standard American diet is the best in the world, right? That they just kind of think that. I think you and I both know that's not true, but that just kind of keeps people going in the way that they've been going.
Yeah, chicken, fish, and low-fat dairy, right? That's what they all view as very healthy.
Yeah.
You know differently about that, but so false perception can also take place. Like there's people that say, I would rather just eat what I want and die early.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just going to die early. You're going to go through 10 or 15 years of chronic, loss of quality of life before it's not like you're just going to, sometimes it could be an instant, and so that's another false perception, is that you can just eat what you want and then not suffer any consequences.
If only that was true. And I think that's also true, not only if you're talking about the difference between eating animal products and eating plants, or if you're talking about eating plant-based, right, or vegan versus eating mostly whole organic plants, right? There's a huge difference there too. I think a lot of people, especially in the movement, think, oh, well, I'm eating this ice cream or something and it's all plant-based, so it's going to be good for me. But in most cases, it's so high in fat that it's going to cause you some problems. So there's so many levels to that, I suppose, in this movement.
You don't want to go from junk food to vegan junk food.
Right.
Right. Eat better than that. So for false perception, one of the ways to combat that is to keep an open mind, evaluate everything you hear and read, with an open mind, experiment with new recipes, and get in a community group. That's the best way to combat it.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And, through our nonprofit, aPlantBasedDiet.org, if you guys go to our website, you can click on our local communities, our local groups, mainly on the East Coast of the United States, but there are plenty of other options too, even besides ours and in other parts of the world. And I totally agree that you need that, positive peer pressure from like-minded individuals near you.
The next one, Mike, I would say is denial. Excuse me. Let me get a drink.
Sure.
Thank you. So we talked about this earlier. Willful ignorance is denial.
Yes.
That's where you refuse to acknowledge that you even have a problem with food, or that your weight and health are suffering. There are people that just deny that. In fact, there's even a Gallup poll that shows that Americans continue to get heavier every year, but they're less likely to see themselves as heavy, or they're less likely to want to lose weight. So in that Gallup poll, it said that the way Americans acknowledge the fact that they're getting heavier is they just adjust the idea of what they should weigh.
Right. Oh,
so
yeah.
Allowing for the extra weight to be okay. So that's denial.
Yes, I definitely see that. And I think for many, many years, I thought that there was something wrong with me, actually, because I'm a guy. I'm over 6 feet tall and I'm not over 200 pounds. So, if you look around, that's just normal, right? You're going to be over 200 pounds, right. But I've never been 200 pounds. But thankfully, I realized that even though I felt like I was a little bit different and maybe not right, it turns out that I'm at the correct BMI. And that's, it's kind of a lot along with what you're saying. It's just that's society. It's a sociology type of a concept, I suppose, where most people will agree to do something a certain way, and that's just the way it is right now. We're definitely, you and I are definitely in the minority.
Definitely, yeah. So denial is a huge barrier to change, and I think refusing to acknowledge your problems can be a coping mechanism for some people. Like it causes them too much stress or anxiety to even think about health issues, or that's part of it.
Right. Yep. I can see that.
So sometimes a counselor might even be in order to figure out why you're in denial about things. If you can't figure that out yourself, because how do you even know you're in denial, right? If you're in denial.
Yeah, you don't. It takes a while, for sure. With so many things, if you think about just myself, what I've learned over the years. Maybe I'm sure on some level, whenever you don't accept anything new, you're in denial about it, right? And there's so many new things that come along on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's kind of a personal denial too. Like, yeah, I know I'm bad there, but that, I'm just going to not think about that. I'm not going to think about it or focus on it. So that's denial too. Yeah. Another big barrier is pride or rebellion. And, there's people that say, you're never going to tell me what to eat. That's like a prideful, rebellious response.
That's the American way, right?
Like any talk about diet, they view it as a threat, a personal threat, and it does not go well. So that could be pride or rebellion. That can be a big stumbling block too.
Yeah.
They think that they'll never get sick too.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's the thing. You and I have talked about this before. Usually there's a giant disconnect between the time you stick something bad in your mouth and the time you actually experience the illness, right? It could be decades.
Right.
So I can understand why people would have a problem with that concept if you're not looking long term.
Right. So they hardly ever will they admit that they're eating wrong foods, because that would admit that they're doing something wrong. So the pride doesn't let them do that. And, there's a difference between healthy pride and unhealthy pride.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine to have healthy pride, when you're humble and proud of things, but this unhealthy pride is where you're arrogant, and when you believe that you're more important than others, kind of a thing too. So
yeah.
It's the thought patterns there. So people that are in that position, they may need to seek, deeper thinking on this as well, but stay positive and flexible in your thought patterns and figure out why you're so, why you want to be seen and heard at the expense of others, basically. That's part of it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that you're bringing up here, because I think that hopefully most folks agree that the most joy is achieved when you are helping other people, right? Mm-hmm. If you try to keep something to yourself, that's, or you're self-seeking, that's when there's usually a problem. But if you're helping others, that's usually the way to go. So folks, I think the more folks focus on just trying to help others and pass the knowledge along, the better.
Mm-hmm. Right. And not focus on self, really. That's what pride is, right? Focusing on self. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
So another big barrier is something that we've talked about before on your show, which is family and social pressure.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's a huge barrier, right? We did a whole talk on that, didn't we?
Yes, we did. Oh, yeah. It's incredibly relevant to, I'd say, just about everyone out there watching.
Yeah.
It really is.
So it's hard to eat healthy when your family's eating buckets of chicken and having birthday cake from the local grocery store, and all of that. It's hard to stay true to your diet.
Yes.
I commend the people that do it. I do know people that do that, even though they're in a house filled with bad food, they're still able to stick with it. But for a lot of people, that's a big barrier. Yeah,
I'd say that, and there's a lot of different ways too. Like the item you mentioned before this, and we were discussing helping others, right? If you're around family members that are like that, maybe all you can do is set an example about just with the people that you spend the most time with, and maybe it's nearly impossible for you to help others outside of that. I don't know, or maybe also what, like you said, you need to get into a community of like-minded individuals to kind of help you just navigate through that on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the people you spend the most time with are, I don't know, if they suffer from any of the things that you've talked about here on the show, mm-hmm. then you're going to need some support.
Yeah. And we've talked about this before too, that a frank discussion is in order with your family to explain why you're doing this and ask them for their help, right? And assure them that they're not going to be forced to change. I mean, there's a lot of tips there, but that's a barrier for a lot of people.
And all the stuff is it a chapter in your book? Is that right?
Yeah, it's my book is called The Plan A Diet. And there's a chapter in there called The 12 Barriers to Change. And we talk about all of this in there.
Awesome.
I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
I was just asking if we've gotten through all 12, or are there a few more still?
There's a few more.
All right.
We're going through these.
I'm sure there are, because if there weren't all these barriers to change, everyone would have already changed over to eating mostly organic whole plants by now.
The emotional eating is another one, right? That's when we turn to food when we're feeling anxious or, any stressors in life, we're turning to food in order to deal or cope with the anxieties of life. I'm an emotional eater, I can relate to that. So
Yes.
Even when I'm trying to delay something I don't want to do, my head's in the refrigerator over here. So I have to be real careful. I know what my triggers are.
Yeah.
That's part of it.
Yeah, well, that concept too is relevant to me, everybody, no matter where you are on your journey. I mean, I know that if I look back in the past years ago, especially when I was eating animal products, I would have a routine of certain things, I'd want to do, or a certain feeling would hit me, like, right, you're talking about emotional, and I'd want to eat this thing, right, to kind of calm that. And even now there's that. And I think as you realize, you go through this journey more and more, you realize how to, the concept of self-control, I suppose, and how important that is, and how you got to fine tune that every step of the way. You're never finished with it, right? I mean, all these factors you're saying can pop up at any time and come back to get you.
I mean, even the fear, sometimes a fear could pop up, or
yeah,
you're in denial about something and then you realize it. I mean, yeah, you're right. Any of these can pop up. It's not once and done. It's not one and done. It's
yeah. And like the fear thing, I mean, you hear, I don't hear so much anymore in the news, but a lot of times you hear about how great, eating eggs is for your health, or salmon or something like that. And then you start second guessing, why am I only eating plants? Right. I mean, and there's a fear. Oh, wait a minute. I'm missing some incredibly important nutrient that is only found in these animal products, and the cycle keeps going on. So it has to be dealt with over and over again.
And the pain avoidance too. I mean, sometimes when you're traveling or, you're in a spot and there's no healthy food around, you just think, but you don't want to be a pain avoider. You just want to be hungry for a little while, and not choose bad foods. But
yeah.
So it's never something that you can just do one time and forget.
Exactly.
And so true with emotional eating.
Yes. Oh, yes, definitely. Definitely, especially that.
So the thing is to determine your weak spots. Like, okay, when I feel boredom, that's when I'm going to eat. But instead, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to call somebody. I'm going to have tea. Make a new plan. A lot of this is planning, right?
Right.
Have a plan in place so that when this happens to you, you're not going to have a knee-jerk response and just go eat something. You're have some plan in place, unless you're truly hungry, because how often do we eat for reasons other than hunger? A lot, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's a big one, emotional eating. Another one is another tip for that is to recognize what's happening too. So when I find my head in the refrigerator, I have to stop and think, okay, why am I doing this right now? Because I'm stressed out about something that I don't want to do. So pause and press the button, sit down for 2 or 3 minutes, just pause and sit down and think of your strategy and point number 1 that we just thought about.
Yeah. And actually, on this one specifically, I'm curious what you think. What do you think about the concept of vigorous aerobic exercise to combat that? Because I think that's something that, a lot of people don't get, especially don't get it on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. And then your mind starts to work in ways it normally wouldn't. And, and if you start to, utilize your body in the way it was designed for some vigorous aerobic exercise every day, a lot of times it will calm the mind, right? Mm-hmm. And that's one way. And meditation is another way, I suppose, right? To do the same thing.
Meditation or prayer. So instead of trying to suppress the emotion, deal with it. Like just sit down and deal with it. Make that emotion front and center. Don't try to suppress it.
Right.
Let it come forth. Think about it. Plan what you're going to do about it instead of just going to food.
Yes, you got a good point.
And then food addiction. I mean, what bigger barrier could there be to changing your diet than food addiction, which so many people are.
Yeah, well, I'd almost say everyone on a level, because I feel like modern food or food-like products, especially that, we see in the United States of America, are just, engineered by people in the food industry for like taste and mouthfeel. And it's specifically to get you to keep going back and become addicted to it, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
that's the whole reason that food-like product was designed. So I feel like in a way, almost everyone is subject to that nowadays.
Yeah, I devote a whole chapter just to that topic. It's called Hooked on Sweets, Treats, and Other Cheats.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
We are salt, sugar, and fat, right? Those are the three big addictors that food manufacturers use to have
Yes.
brains light up. I mean, they actually use MRIs to see, what combination of those ingredients, some type of scanning tool to see when you're going to reach that bliss point, as they call it. And
Yeah. I suppose it would be all good if those foods were optimizing your body, optimizing your health, your immune system. It'd be all good. But I think, as you and I know, that does the exact opposite usually.
right.
Those foods. So that's why it's so bad.
Yeah. So if you go out of your way to get those foods, or you're going to have withdrawal symptoms from those foods, if you stop eating them, then you might have an addiction. And I've shared this with you before. I think, I've got myself addicted to a mocha coffee thing several years ago that
Okay.
I was going way out of my way to get that drink and planning my errands around it. And
Yeah.
my husband and I were traveling. I'd plug it in the GPS and we'd go miles off the highway. And I'm like, what the heck? So when I was writing the book, I realized that I had a monkey on my back that had to go, I was in denial about it.
Yeah, well, that's everyone has their thing, and even if it's a thing or not a thing for you now, there may be something later, because there's always something new. It's always something shinier and more attractive, right? In these areas, so it's a constant temptation.
Yeah. And so I have to be careful I don't go back there. Like you said, it's a constant awareness of what you're doing. So tip number one there is to decontaminate your environment, right? Because if you have those addictive foods in the house, they're going to call your name until you are eating them. That's why I say that often the decision to eat healthy starts at the grocery store, because if you don't bring it home, it's not there.
And don't leave it in the car either, right?
So if it's 9:00 at night and you want something sweet and you've got a cheesecake in the freezer or a mango, what are you going to go for? Buy the cheesecake.
Right. Oh yeah, that's right. All right. So we're on the solution, or the fixes, or the antidote to the issues you talked about earlier, right? And so I totally am with that. Just get it out of sight, get it out of your house and your car too, because if it's in the car, same thing, right? I mean, just completely don't even buy that, right? And that means a lot of times that the real resistance is bypassing it when you're in the grocery store or when you're looking online to shop. You just have to just bypass it right then and there, right?
Right. Or even at the office when there's glazed donuts sitting in the workroom, That's where in my book I talk about you either have to face it or flee from it. Now, that's a situation where you flee from it, right? You can get away from it.
Yes.
But if you can't, if there's something in front of you that you can't flee from, then you have to face it and figure out in advance how you're gonna deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of know your trigger points, like family gatherings and office parties and all this bad food, right? It's going to be there, potlucks,
Yes. I mean, but it's, to me, I guess the way I try to combat these things is kind of a logical thinking, try to anyway, because I know a lot of this is not logical thinking. It's more emotional eating, right? Like you were talking about earlier, and even this point. So, and you're talking about family gatherings and things. Well, I know this sounds a little weird, but when someone dies, I always want to find out why they died. That's the first thing I want to find out, because I want to know what happened to them, so that maybe I won't allow that to happen to me. And so much of this involves what you put in your mouth, right? What you eat, all these little things. And I just have to remind myself of that. Like, well, why don't I want to do this? Well, remember what happened to this person. Remember what happened to that person. And we don't want that to happen. So.
Right. I mean, diet is our number one cause of disability and premature death. Dr. Greger writes about that in his books.
Yes.
Yeah. So another thing is total abstinence. Like if you have a food addiction, you can't just eat one cheese stick a day or one cupcake a day, whatever it is that is your trigger.
Yeah.
You got to totally abstain from it, right? Or you're just going to keep drip feeding your pleasure center and maybe slip all the way back into that old habit.
Yep, it's not hard at all. Yeah, I agree that sometimes, and that if not most of the time, that is the best way to do it. And you've got to replace it with something else, right? If you're going to eliminate it, have something else that you're going to focus on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Just don't try to give it up and not have anything.
Yeah,
The option in place, and you're really going to be struggling. I mean,
yeah,
there's
fine.
ways to make on my website 10 dessert
There you
smoothies.
go.
So I have this free PDF.
I was gonna say that's
Like,
it. Yeah, you need to have something like that, like something with some fiber in it, right? Something with low in fat. These types of things. That's what you want to focus on. Find something that you really love that fits that description.
yeah, Yonana ice cream, right? Who doesn't want cherry ice cream at night? Frozen bananas and frozen cherries.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
it is.
Yes.
So yeah, that's part of it. So those are the main big barriers that I have listed in my book.
Okay.
And that was just, like I said, a nutshell version of each one. But these are things I've observed over many, many years of why people who even want to change, people that want to make changes, but it's just something always draws them back, or they can't get very far in the change.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess, kind of reiterating something you said earlier here in this video is that you want to get plugged into people that you can relate to. I mean, I think the 5 people that you surround yourself is the average of who you're going to become as an individual. So you've got to, even if you've got a couple, like two people that you hang out with in your family or your household that don't fit the definition of where you want to be, you got to find 3 others then, right? that'll really hold you accountable and help you to improve and get better.
Yeah. And one more tip too, like even if you have stumbled and went back, don't stop. If it takes 5 tries to do it, just keep doing it. So many people have failed many times before they actually adopted a whole food plant-based diet, right? They've tried and they go back, and then, I mean, hopefully you don't go back too often or slip off the track. But even if you do, start with your next meal. Don't be overwhelmed. Just start. What are you going to have for your next meal? Think of that and go forward.
Yeah, and it's a lifelong journey, right? I mean, it really is, and the reward is that you don't have to suffer near the end of your life. And for that matter, you don't have to suffer through the middle of your life either. It seems like that's the norm nowadays. When I say suffer, I mean someone's on maintenance pharmaceuticals through their 30s, 40s, and 50s. I mean, that's a form of suffering, if you ask me, because they have to endure all the side effects of those medications, which are all are pretty bad. And of course, they're limiting their own abilities to do things and enjoy things as well, because they're suffering from these conditions that require medications.
Yeah. And you know what? I just created a webinar about that. If I could just tell the link, would you mind?
Yeah,
Mike?
it's great. Yeah.
Okay, sidnotter.com/register. And it's a whole webinar just on how, well, what you just said, cholesterol issues, hypertension, diabetes, type 2 diabetes, gut issues, acid reflux, inflammatory things, all of these things.
And all of them don't have to happen, right?
Now, up to 90% of them do not have to happen.
Okay. Good.
To the experts that we know and trust.
Okay.
I would say that almost 100% of them, in what I see in my business, 100% would not have to happen. So many dietary lifestyle, which are preventable. It's so sad to see people suffering and just taking medications.
Yeah.
Alter their biomarkers or make them feel better, but never get to the root cause of why they're sick. Never that.
You're right. The root cause. I mean, that's it. I mean, I think that even if somebody's watching this and they heard all of you had to say, what you have to say about these barriers and then some possible fixes for those, I mean, the reality is that we need to get this talked about more and in front of more people, because all people see is, pharmaceutical ads on television or something like that, or when they go in to see, someone, are told that there's really either there's no discussion on how to heal, or they're told that this is just, something that they're going to have to deal with, and are not given any kind of way to heal. So
exactly.
But you and I know, I mean, there really is. I mean, it's just a matter of lifestyle choices, making the right ones.
And I did not grow up this way. You know, I was very unhealthy into my mid 30s. I didn't start this till in my mid 30s. So I was at the Dairy Queen getting blizzards and at the VFW fish fry. You know, I was doing all of that.
Yeah.
At the start of my journey, I was eating Tombstone cheese pizzas and Hostess cupcakes and thought I was eating healthy.
Oh yeah, I was there. I was there too. I mean, I'm 51, so I went through, grew up in the 70s and 80s. Yeah, that stuff all the time. So, but yeah, and for me, it wasn't until I was about 30 that I really saw a connection, right? Because I went to the doctor and the doctor told me I had a high cholesterol, and that's when I started investigating things. But before that, I didn't know anything about any of this stuff.
Right. Me too. I had high cholesterol and the nurse told me to exercise more. She didn't say anything about diet at all.
Yep.
Number one thing. Yeah. So.
Well, I mean, you're doing some great work here, getting the word out to folks. I know you've got your book, the Plan A Diet, right? And you can get that online, I think, at your website or Amazon. Is that right?
On Amazon or on my website, sidnotter.com.
Okay.
It's cheaper on my website. I'll, send you a copy out.
All right. Very good. So, but thank you again for helping get the word out and for doing, some of these informative videos here. We get to talk about these important issues, and I hope to, looking forward to the next one already. And if you find this video valuable, by all means, share it with friends, comment below, tag friends, depending upon where you're watching it, and give us some more ideas too, potentially of topics you want us to cover in the future.
Yeah.
All right. Well, have a great day, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.